Hello and welcome to this video in which we're going to review ratios. A ratio is a comparison of two quantities by division. And we have three ways of writing this. So for example, I might say that it's a 7:2 ratio. It might be 7 girls to 2 boys, and that's the ratio of boys to girls. Okay. It's important to remember that I want to be consistent. So if I have boys to girls, it's important when we're looking at ratios to realize what are the quantities, what do the numbers represent. So this is way number 1. I have 7:2. A second way of writing it is as a fraction. I can write it as a 7:2 ratio. And I want to make sure that it's reduced as well. Okay. The third way is a 7:2. It's a 7:2 ratio. Out of all these, this way number 1 is the way it's read. A ratio is read. This is probably the most common because we're so used to working with fractions. So a lot of what we know about ratios and rates, what we learn about fractions also applies to those ratio and rates. When I begin to look at equivalent ratios, for example, if there are 14 girls to, let's say 12 boys, it's a 14:12 ratio, but I can go ahead and divide both these numbers by 2. So an equivalent ratio would be a 7:2 ratio. So basically what I'm going to deal with here is equivalent fractions. If I had a 3:4 ratio, I could say that would also be, if I wanted to say multiply by 4, and say, well, what happens when I have 16 of something? I would have 12 of something. So basically we're working with equivalent fractions here. When we begin to talk about rates, rates are basically ratios comparing two quantities measured in different units. So the most common rate we probably have is what our speed is. If somebody is going 55 miles per hour, let's write this out. What this is really talking about is somebody's going 55 miles per, and the key word here is per when we're dealing with rate. And that's where I'm going to put my fraction bar, where I'm going to put my division. It's 55 miles per hour. And how many hours am I talking about? Well, I'm really just talking about 1 hour. If I'm saying someone's going 55 miles per hour, I'm talking about somebody going 55 miles per 1 hour. 55 miles in 1 hour. Okay. So ratios are comparing two quantities. In this case, I'm comparing the 55 miles to the 1 hour. They have different units, but this is what makes it a rate. And most times I can tell a rate because it has the word per in it, as in 55 miles per hour. When I begin to look at what's called a unit rate, it's a rate per 1. And most rates are given as unit rates. So for example, 55 miles per hour is a unit rate because it's 55 miles in 1 hour or per 1 hour. But many times where this is used is for a unit cost to determine what's the best price of an item. So for example, what happens if somebody says, oh, well, it costs $5 for 2? I would say that the unit cost would be $2.50 per item, whether it be a box of cookies or whatever, okay? Whatever the per one of something is, okay? Comparing two different soft drinks. Suppose it's 99 cents for a 20-ounce soda, or somebody else charges $1.09 for a 24-ounce. What's the best unit rate? Or what's the best price? Well, I would take the fact that it's 99 cents, and I would divide it by 20 ounces. And this would give me the unit price per ounce. And then I would do the same thing. What's $1.09 divided by 24? This would also give me the unit price per ounce. And then what I could do is compare what are these two prices. And so when I look at these unit rates, I get 0.0495, 0.0454. So actually, the $1.09 for 24 ounces is the better unit price, or unit cost. Okay, so this is one application of unit rates. It's comparing equal quantities. It's usually per one of something. So it could be 1 hour, 1 ounce, 1 pound of something. It could be per cookie, although usually they're packaged in, say, like a box of cookies, or per ounce, really, for that. So anyway, hopefully this has been a helpful review of ratios and rates. I know we did cover this some last year, but hopefully this will begin to call all this information back to mind.